皆さん、こんにちは。紹介いただきました、国民民主党代表の玉木雄一郎です。
Hello, everybody. As introduced, I am head of the Democratic Party for the People. My name is Yuichiro Tamaki. Thank you.
スローンさんから非常に丁寧なご紹介をいただきましてありがとうございました。
Thank you, Mr. Sloan, for your very detailed or thorough introduction of me.
冒頭10分ぐらいで私からお話をさせていただきます。
I will first speak for around 10 minutes.
先般の衆議院選挙で、国民民主党は、選挙前の7議席から28議席に4倍に議席を増やすことができました。
In the recent election, the DPP was able to increase our seats in the Diet from 7 to 28, an increase of 4 times.
41人の小選挙区での候補者しか出せませんでしたけれども、比例票で前回259万票だったものが617万票に増えました。617万ですね。
以前が
259。
すみません。And so in the single constituencies, the single state, we had 41 candidates, and in the proportional electorates, we were able to raise the number of votes from 2.59 million previously to 6.17 in this election.
増えた要因として2つ考えられると思っています。
There are two particular reasons I see for this increase.
一つは多くの政党が政治と金の問題に多くの議論を時間を費やす中で、私たちは手取りを増やす経済政策を正面から訴えました。
I think that the first is that many of the political parties were focusing on the issue of the political funds issue and raising their time and questions in regards to this. However, we very much directly and from the front on focused on the issue of how to increase the pay in hand for the public.
で、その対象は、若者、現役世代をターゲットにして政策を訴えました。
And with our focus on economic policies, this was particularly targeting young people and those of working age.
今、日本は高齢者が多いですし、高齢者ほど投票率が高いので、与党だけではなく、野党もまた多くの野党が高齢者を支援する政策を主に訴えます。
In Japan, there is, of course, a very large elderly population. In addition to this, it is also an elderly population that has a very high voting rate as well. Therefore, not only the ruling party, but also opposition parties have a large focus on policies which are in support of the elderly population.
そんな中で私たちは、若い人、現役世代をターゲットにした、手取りを増やす経済政策を訴えたことが、議席が増えた要因の一つだと考えます。
Therefore, I believe that within such a context, the fact that we were focusing on economic policies, and particularly those which would look at how to lead to an increase in the pay in hand for the young and working age generation people, was one of the factors that led to this increase in our number of seats.
2つ目は、SNS、とりわけ YouTube をはじめとした動画を積極的に活用したということです。
And the second was our proactive utilization of social media, particularly videos and YouTube.
こういったことがですね、我が党が議席を増やすことができた2つの大きな要素だと思っています。
So I believe that these are the two primary factors, the major factors which led to our party experiencing such an increase in the number of seats.
ただ私たちには高揚感、あるいは興奮というものが全くありません。
However, we are not just, resting on this success, just being excited by this result.
なぜならこの議席の増加はそれだけ今の日本の若い人や現役世代が困ってるし、将来に不安を感じていることの表れだと思っているからです。
The reason for this is we believe that this increase in the number of seats also indicates how much the young people, working generation in Japan, are experiencing difficulties at the moment and also feeling this sense of unease in regards to the future.
だからこそ、その期待をしてくれた若い人や現役世代の、声に応えるために、選挙で掲げた政策、この手取りを増やす経済政策を、何が何でも実現していきたいと考えています。
And this is especially the reason why, in order to respond to these voices, these calls from the young people and working generations, it's why we need to look at doing all that we can to ensure an implementation of those policies which we were putting forward during the election, including this increase in pay in hand.
特に、訴えたのが所得税の、 基礎控除を引き上げて、今、税金のかかる水準が103万円からということになってますが、これは1995年、今から29年前に決まった基準です。でそこから約30年、デフレが続いたので、この基準は変わらないままなんですが、今、インフレになってきてますので、この基礎控除を引き上げて、178万円まで引き上げるというのが、私たちの経済政策の大きな柱です。
And one of our main pillars in regards to our economic policy is looking at the figure of the basic deduction for income tax. This is set now at the standard of 1.03 million Japanese yen. However, this is a figure which was decided in the year 1995. That's 29 years ago. There was deflation continuing in the period close to 30 years since after that. Therefore, there has been no change whatsoever made in this standard figure that was decided almost 30 years ago. However, now Japan is experiencing a period of inflation. This is therefore why we are calling to increase this to 178 million yen instead as our basic policy.
加えて、1995年から今日まで最低賃金が 1.73 倍になっています。
In addition to this, also, the basic minimum wage has increased since the year 1995 until now by 1.73%.
この103万円の水準を変えずに、いくら最低賃金を上げても、結局、働く時間を調整して、103万円に所得を抑える人がたくさん出ているので、豊かになれません。
However, even with a change in the increase in the minimum wage, without having a change in this basic deduction figure on income tax, it is leading to people who are therefore just adjusting their time working, their working hours to ensure that their income will remain within this figure as well, which is not leading to a richer situation at all.
178万円という基準は、最低賃金がこの29年間で 1.73 倍になっているので、103万円も 1.73 倍にして、178万円という数字を訴えました。
The figure of 178 million yen, which we are proposing as the new figure, is based on also the proportion of the increase that has been seen on minimum wage as well. From 1995, in the 29 years since, the minimum wage has increased by 1.73 times. Therefore, we are also proposing a 1.73 times increase on this basic deduction figure to bring it to 178.
最後に今後の、政策実現についての、戦略を申し上げます。
And finally, I would like to speak about our strategy for realizing these policies from now.
この選挙の後現れている今の日本の政治の現状は、いわゆるハングパーラメントという状況だと思います。
I think that the situation that has come to arise since the recent election in Japanese politics is the situation of a hung parliament.
今までは自民党と公明党が過半数を占めていたので、自民党と公明党の内部で了承が得られれば、すべての政策が決まるという状況にありました。
Until now, because the LDP and Komeito combined have continued to maintain a majority, it has meant that as long as there is internal agreement between these two parties, all policies have been passed according to that.
しかしその状況が今崩れてしまったので、自民党、公明党だけでは政策、法律、予算を決めることができなくなっています。
However, that situation has now fallen apart, meaning that it is no longer possible for policy, legislation, or budget to be passed just through the LDP and Komeito alone.
で、多くの人はこの状況を不安定化したと、政治が不安定化したというふうに呼びますけれども、私たちはこの現状をプラスに捉えています。
Many people read or interpret this situation as a kind of uncertainty in politics. However, for us, we actually take this situation as a positive.
というのも今まではですね、とにかく自民党、公明党が決めれば、もう数の力で、全て押し切ることができたんですけれども、それができなくなったので、自民党、公明党も私たち国民民主党をはじめ、他の野党の意見も丁寧に聞かなければいけなくなっています。
The reason being for this, that until now there has been a situation that if something is decided within the LDP and Komeito purely based on numbers, they are able to push any kind of policy through. However, they are no longer able to do this. This is not the case, so therefore they now need to listen sincerely to the voices from opposition parties, including our party, the DPP.
でも同時に野党もまた新たな、そして大きな責任を負ったと思っています。
At the same time, however, the opposition parties also, as a result of this, have a new and significant responsibility.
今まではですね、自民党、公明党が過半数を割るということは想定されなかったので、とにかく野党は基本的にはもう反対するということが、主な戦略戦術でした。
The reason being, until now, it had not been anticipated that there would be a situation that the majority of the LDP and Komeito would be broken. Therefore, the role, or rather the strategy of the opposition parties was very much a role of being in opposition in protest.
でもこれからの野党は単に反対するだけではなくて、このハングパーラメントの中でより建設的な議論、建設的な提案を行っていく責任を負っていると思っています。
However, from now, within this situation of the hung parliament, the role and the responsibility of the opposition parties is not only to be in opposition, to be going against the policies which are being put forward by the ruling government. Rather than that, it is looking at how to create constructive debate and also put forward and create proposals within the parliament.
今、日本だけではなくて、世界を見ても、極端な主張であったり、あるいはこの分断ということが政治の世界でも広がっています。
Not only within Japan, but globally as well, we are seeing within the sphere of politics an increase and expansion of both extreme positions and also division.
そんな中で対決より解決、政策重視ということを訴えて、議席を4倍に増やすことができた私たち国民民主党の果たす役割は極めて大きいと自覚をしています。
Within such a situation, we see that our position, our standard, looking not at tensions but at resolution of issues, also having policy at the heart, having policy as the highest priority, has what led to our large increase in the election and also is the role that we as the DPP are to play from now.
この新しい政治状況の下で、ぜひ私たち国民民主党も積極的な役割を果たしていきたいと思いますし、また私たちに託してくれた国民の思いを実現できる政策の実現に全力で取り組んでいきたいと思います。
So with this new political situation as a base, we as the DPP are hoping or pledging to continue to take this kind of an active role going forward, and also looking at the trust that people have placed in us as the party as well, looking at how we can implement policies that will realize their will, what they are calling for.
月曜日の主犯指名選挙では、1回目も、そして決選投票でも、玉木雄一郎と書くつもりであります。石破さんとも書かないし、野田さんとも書かないということで臨みたいと。私たちは誰と組むかということではなく、何を実現するか、つまり政策を重視をして、これからの意思決定をしていきたいと。それが私たちの基本方針だということで臨んでいきたいと思います。
In the election to select the Prime Minister upcoming on Monday, in both the first round of voting and also the second or runoff round, we will be writing Tamaki Yuichiro. We will not be writing Mr. Ishiba nor Mr. Noda on either of those votes on Monday. For us, it is not who we partner with, but what we are realizing, therefore keeping policy at the core. This is our basic stance and how we pledge to go forward in decision making from here.
最後に私たちにとっても来年の参議院選挙が極めて重要だと思っています。今回、衆議院選挙で4倍に議席を増やすことができましたが、やはり参議院でもしっかりと議席を増やせるかどうかが、私たちがこれから伸びていくかどうかを決める、大きな試金石になると思っているので、もう早速、参議院選挙に向けて、候補者の発掘擁立、これに全力で取り組んでいきたいと思っています。以上です。
And as a final comment as well, we also do see next year's House of Councils election being of great importance as well. In this recent election, we were able to increase our number of seats in the House by 4 times, but looking at what we are able to achieve in regards to an increase in next year's election will also be, I believe, a great indicator as to what kind of growth we will have as a party from now as well. So therefore, we are already putting our efforts into the seeking out or selection of candidates and working towards this election next year as being of great importance as well.
Thank you, Tamaki-san. Today we have a large number of working press here in the building. We are also live streaming on YouTube, and we're taking questions from the internet. I'll open the floor for our working press here. First, Tim Kelly. Always, for any of our questioners, please come on up. Just identify yourself, your organization, and please limit yourself to one question so we can get everybody. And of course, no speeches.
これ実用党の方に入りたいと思いますが、会場からもオンラインからも質問を受けしています。
Tim Kelly from Reuters. Thank you for talking to us today. So we've just had the US election. So if it's a Trump administration, that could mean tax cuts, could mean tariffs, which could drive inflation in the US and therefore potentially a rate hike by the Fed at some point. That could mean a weaker yen and could push inflation in Japan. So given that, have you in any way adjusted your economic policies in regard to Japan? You've talked about 6 months, at least 6 months since until the BOJ should raise rates. Is that something you're going to stick to? And kind of related to that, you were a finance ministry bureaucrat for a long time. Fiscal expansion is not something you usually think of when you talk about finance ministry bureaucrats. Was there any kind of event or was there any insight that you had that made you switch to becoming someone who supports fiscal expansion? And if I could just add, you met the US ambassador yesterday, Emmanuel. Could you give us any details of what you talked about with him? Thank you.
ロイターズのティム・ケリーと申します。まず先日アメリカでの大統領選というのがあったんですけれども、トランプ大統領が誕生したということで、その税源ですとか関税の政策などどのようにアメリカが今後展開していくのかということがあります。でそれによってそのアメリカのインフレが拡大することによってやはり日本の円安ですとか日本のインフレなどにもつながるというようなことが、今可能性として考えられているんですけれども、トランプ大統領の誕生を受けて日本での経済政策をどのように今後変えていくようなことがあるのか、今考えられている政策にトランプの誕生を受けて変化をするようなこと、変えるようなことがあるのか、例えば日銀の少なくとも半年経ってからしかに上げないなどということを今までは申し上げているんですけれども、そのようなことについてのご意見お願いします。そして長年財務省の方で仕事されてきたということなんですけれども、そのような経験から財政の緊縮というよりも拡大していくというようなことがそのご経験から少しギャップを感じるんですけれども、その中でやはり出来事ですとか何かきっかけ、その考え方が変わったようなきっかけというものはありましたでしょうか。そして昨日ですね、アメリカ大使にもお会いしたというふうに伺っているんですけれども、エマニュエル大使との会談の中でどのような話をされたのか、もしコメントできることがあればお願いします。
はい、ティムさんありがとうございます。3点質問をいただきました。まず1点目、アメリカトランプ大統領になったことによる経済政策の変化、日本への影響ですけれども、関税を高くしたりですね、減税をするということになると、まさに、経済がより過熱してインフレになりがちなので、金利を上げてそれを抑えようとするので、アメリカの金利はより上がっていく、その結果、円安が進んでいく、ドル高が進んでいく傾向にはあると思います。ただ、国内の政策はやっぱ国内の政策目標を見ながらやらなければいけないので、私はやはり実質賃金が安定的にプラスになるまではですね、日銀の金融政策については変更すべきではないという立場ですから、来年の春の春闘でのですね、中小企業の賃上げがどれぐらいになるのかということをよく見定めてた上で、金融政策の変更は慎重に行うべきだというふうに思っています。
So thank you, Kelly, for those 3 points, those 3 questions. First of all, in regards to any changes in economic policy or the impact on Japan from the birth of the Trump administration in the United States. As mentioned, looking at the potential increase in tariffs or the reducing taxes as well could indeed lead to this kind of situation of increase in interest rates, therefore increase in inflation and so on, which could have the impact on the Japanese yen weakening and so on, as was mentioned in the question. However, looking at policies, I believe that when we are looking at setting domestic policies, we need to look at the domestic goals and objectives in regards to that as well, and have that as the target. In regards to this, as mentioned, I do not believe that it is therefore in the interest to have any kind of increase in the interest or change in the Bank of Japan's rates in this current immediate period as well, until looking at in the period of spring next year, when we can see, for example, the actual increase in wages or the situation of wages, particularly within mid-sized companies in Japan as well, and then cautiously look at any potential changes in the Bank of Japan's policies at that timing.
2番目の質問ですけども、やっぱり一つのきっかけは30年続いたデフレですね。私が大蔵省に入ったのが1993年で、日本の実質賃金指数のピークが96年で、そこから30年ずっと実質賃金が下がり続けてきました。同じ政策を続けていても、同じ未来になってしまうということで、経済政策、とりわけ財政政策の変更が必要だと思ったのと、あとアメリカの経済政策を結構参考にして、いわゆるそのハイプレッシャーエコノミーというのをですね、日本でこそ実現すべきだということを考えるようになったのが、一つ、政策の変更というか、その考え方を変えた大きな理由の一つですね。
And in regards to your second question, the main factor in regards to this change in my way of thinking is looking at the continuation of deflation for this period of close to 30 years as well. It was the year 1993 when I joined the Treasury at that time as well. The peak in actual wages maximum for Japan was in the year 1996, so just several years after that as well. After that, however, we saw this continuing situation of deflation and the situation of the Japanese economy in the decades following this, which made me feel that if we are just continuing the same policies, then we will be looking at the same kind of future as well. This is what made me start to see a need for a change in economic and particularly fiscal policies through that experience. In addition to this, one other factor was also using the United States economic policies rather as a reference as well, believing that it is, in fact, in Japan, especially so that looking at how or a high pressure, so-called high pressure economy should be put into place as well. So not necessarily a change in policy, but a change in my way of looking at these issues, my thinking on these issues was through these two factors.
3番目の質問は外交の問題なのでノーコメントにさせていただきたいと思います。ただ、私たち国民民主党の外交政策の基本はですね、戦争は水際までということで、国内でいろんな意見が分かれてもですね、外交安全保障については与党野党立場を超えて対外的には一枚岩で向き合っていかなければいけないということで、国益に照らして判断する外交安全保障政策を進めていきたいと思います。
And as for the third question, because this is a diplomatic matter, I will refrain from making comments on the specifics of the conversation. But largely in regards to the DPP, our policy overall for foreign policy as well, we believe that for foreign and security policy, this is something that should be done going beyond any party lines, whether it's between the ruling or the opposition parties as well, keeping the Japanese national interest at the center, and particularly looking at the external face, the external expression of foreign policy should be done in a monolithic way, one in a unified way.
Yes, sir.
My name is Takuya Nishimura, freelance journalist. Thank you very much. Let me ask in Japanese. 日本語で伺います。首相指名選挙について伺いますけれども、玉木さんは玉木雄一郎という名前を投票用紙に書くということでおっしゃってますけれども、これ決選投票で書くということになると、決選投票のルールとしては衆議院規則、参議院も一緒ですけれども、投票の最多数を得た者2人について決選投票を行う。つまり、2人の中に入ってないことを書くのはこれ反則と。しかも1週間前からもうそうするというふうにおっしゃっているのは、これ一種の確信犯のように感じるわけです。それで、お聞きしたいのはこれですね。国民民主党の党員の各議員に党議拘束かけるんですか。 つまりそのように投票するように指示するんですかっていうのが一つ。それからそういう投票した場合、必ず結果も見えてます。例えば石破さんと野田さんが予想されるわけですけれども、数の上では石破さんが総理大臣に選出されるということが確実になります。玉木さんが玉木雄一郎、それ国民民主党がみんなそう書けばですね。そうすると、これは与党に加担するようなことになって、国民民主党は与党に入ることになりませんか。つまり与党の定義は玉木さん、どう考えてますか。
はい、ありがとうございます。
Okay, 英語で。失礼します。To summarize the question, in regards to the election for the Prime Minister coming up on Monday, you've indicated that in both the first and second rounds of the election, you would write the name Tamaki Yuichiro. However, looking at the written rules for both the houses in the process of selecting the name for this, it is set out that you are to write one of the two names which has received the most number of votes in the first round. Therefore, this could be seen as a clear going against these rules for that voting process there as well. And already announcing this even since 1 week before that election already shows this sort of intention of breaking that rules in advance. But the questions, first of all, what you think about this. Second, in regards to whether you are giving instructions to the members of your party to vote in this way, to write your name in both of these two as well. And the next factor of that, it would be clear then if the members of the DPP are to write your name, then given just the numbers, it would be clear that it is very likely that it would be Mr. Ishiba who is then voted as Prime Minister if the DPP all do write Mr. Tamaki your name as well. This could be seen, therefore, they're contributing to the government party, and therefore, from the people's perspective as well, could be seen as the DPP actually being on the side of the government in that respect. So how do you see the definition of an opposition party in relation to this question?
クイックアンサーを申し上げると、党議拘束はかけます。で、与党の定義は、内閣を構成する大臣を出すかどうか。与党以外が野党です。
And so to give a very quick answer, we will be going ahead and writing this with this understanding. As for the definition of the opposition, it is looking at, well, who is leading the government, which party they are from, and then whoever is not that party, that is the opposition.
それで投票はですね、石破さんにはしません。やはりこの民意は政治とカネの問題で、自民党、公明党に過半数を与えなかったわけですから、我々が石破さんに投票することはまずありません。
And as for the voting itself, we will not be voting for Mr. Ishiba. The will of the people, particularly their dissatisfaction in regards to the issue of politics and money, the political funding scandals, is clear that they have not given the majority to them. Therefore, we will not be voting for Mr. Ishiba.
で一方で私たちが、野田さんと書かない理由も2つあります。
On the other hand, there are two reasons that we will not be writing Mr. Noda's name.
一つは私たちそうは言っても28議席しかないので、私たちが仮に野田さんと書いても、野田さんは過半数取れません。
The first is we, even though we have had an increase, we do only have 28 seats within the parliament. Therefore, even if we were all to write Mr. Noda, that would not give him a majority.
例えば、私どもより多い野党である維新も書かないと言ってますし、れいわさんなんかも書かないということなので、我々が野田さんに書くことが何か優位な変化を起こすことができないので、そこはですね、我々独自の判断、つまり2枚目も2回目も玉木雄一郎と書こうということが理由の一つです。
Therefore, looking at opposition parties who are larger than us, such as the Ishin no Kaide Japan Restoration Party, for example, have also said that they will not be writing Mr. Noda's name. Also, Reiwa Shinsenkumi has said that they will also not be writing Mr. Noda. Therefore, even if we were to vote for Mr. Noda in that second round, this would not have an actual impact on a difference in results there. This is why we have made our own decision to write Tamaki.
2つ目の理由はですね、野田さんを書かない2つ目の理由は、もし野田さんと書くってことはですね、仮にその計算上はすべての野党を足すと過半数を超えますが、じゃあその共産党から日本保守党まで右から左まで含めたその内閣を構成したときに、一体どういう統一政策で、中には自衛隊が憲法に違反しているというところから、非常にこの国家の基本政策においてもさまざまなというか、かなり幅のある人たちが一緒になって、どういう政権構想や政策を描くのかということについて、 当の野田さんから全く説明を受けてませんし、依頼もされていないので、我々としては、石破さんに入れる理由もなければ、野田さんに入れる理由もないということで、やはり私たちに託してくれた、国民民主党頑張れと、一票を託してくれた人に最も忠実、誠実に答えるのは、今回は1回目も2回目も玉木雄一郎と書くことだということで、こういう方針を決めました。
And the second reason for not writing Mr. Noda's name is if we were to purely look at calculations of putting together the votes of all of the opposition parties, it is true that it would be possible, therefore, to have a majority for him as the opposition. However, this would cover the spectrum going right from the Communist Party to Japan through to conservative parties, from right to left as well. If we were to imagine what kind of cabinet such this would comprise, how would it be possible to have any kind of unified policies within such a situation? For example, it includes also those parties who have the position that the self-defense forces of Japan are a violation of the constitution, as one example. So looking at how to put forward these basic national, basic state policies with such a broad spectrum of political views from these different parties, imagining what kind of government, what kind of policy could be put forward, this is something which Mr. Noda himself has not offered any kind of explanation about, and he has not also called for this kind of thing as well. Therefore, we do therefore not see any reason also to vote in favor to put Mr. Noda's name in that as well. Rather than this, what is clear for us is how to be sincere and loyal to the public who have entrusted their vote in encouragement of the DPP as well. This is why, therefore, this time we will not be writing either of their names on either of the votes.
Our next question with Khaldun. Again, we have about 15 minutes left. Please try to limit yourself to one question.
一人ずつ一つの質問に限ってください。
Thank you. Good to see you again, Tamaki-san. My question, Khaldun Azari, Panorama News, my question follow up a little bit to the diplomacy. You said, I understand that your foreign policy across the party lines, it's for Japan national interest. So what do you think the main challenges facing Japan now, if any? And do you mean that you approve the Jiminto policies, foreign policy, all the board, basically? Thank you.
はい、パンアラブニューズのカルロ・アンザリと申します。外交問題についてお伺いします。先ほどの質問とも関連するんですけれども、外交政策、安全保障政策も日本の国益を第一に、そして政党を超えて協力するというようなお話だったんですけれども、もし今あるとしたら日本にはどのような外交安全保障のチャレンジが今あるのか、課題があるのか、そして自民党の政策、外交政策には賛同されているのかという2点についてお願いします。
2つの問題にまとめて答えますと、今、日本の外交、安全保障の最大のチャレンジは、サイバー攻撃に対する防御は極めて弱いということですね。で、国民民主党は、防衛3文書を政府が決定する前に、私たちの安全保障政策をまとめて、当時の岸田内閣に提案をしましたが、その中に入れたのがアクティブサイバーディフェンスの国内法をしっかり速やかに整備するということでしたけれども、一部報道だと、この秋の臨時国会で、アクティブサイバーディフェンスの法律については見送るという報道が出ていて、これは日本のサイバー防御を極めて脆弱なものにすると同時に、日米間のサイバー防御についても極めてマイナスになってしまうので、この法整備は我々も協力するので、急いでやるべきだということを、来週月曜日の石破総理との首脳会談でも、時間があればこれ申し上げたいと思っているので、端的に申し上げれば、サイバー分野における防御と、そして各国連携、とりわけ日米連携が極めて弱いと、ここを強化することが必要だと考えます。
I will combine both of those questions together. Looking first of all at Japan's foreign and security policy, I believe that the biggest challenge issue at the moment is the very weak defense capabilities in the face of potential cyber attacks. In the process before the Japanese Ministry of Defense put together their three primary defense documents, we put together our own party's policy in regards to this and presented this to Prime Minister Kishida at the time as well. But looking at one of the particular focuses within that is the need for speedy legislation to be put in place domestically in regards to an active cyber defense policy and capacity as well. According to some reporting, it is said that in the upcoming extra session of the Diet to be held this autumn, this discussion of this legislation is going to be postponed, is going to be put off for a later time. However, we believe that this will put Japan in a very vulnerable situation in regards to cyber defense. It will also be a negative in regards to the coordination between Japan and the United States on this issue as well. Therefore, we are stating that we will cooperate as we can in order to work towards putting in place this legislation with a sense of urgency. At the time when I meet with Prime Minister Ishiba on Monday, if time allows, I am planning to raise this issue as well. So to put it very simply, looking at the need for improving or enhancing Japan's cyber defense capabilities and coordination with other countries, particularly the U.S. in this field.
Our next question comes from online. Eric Johnson of the Japan Times asks you, sir, apparently the LDP, Komeito, and DPP policy chiefs are meeting this morning. They're discussing the tax exempt issue that you raised, but apparently there's concern that this will affect money for regional revitalization. How do you see, are the two connected?
次オンラインの方でジャパンタイムズのエリック・ジョンソン記者からの質問です。今日の午前中にもまさに自民党、公明党、そして国民民主党の政策の担当者が会談を持つということが報道されているんですけれども、それ経済政策、先ほどの壁などの問題についてのお話し合いというふうに伺っていますが、その中で、それ引き上げるということが、地方再生などのための税金などが減ってしまうというような恐れがあるということが言われているんですけれども、特に自民党の方からそのような懸念の声があるんですが、それについてのコメントをお願いします。
はい、そういった懸念が出ていることは承知をしていますが、ただ一方で、私たちが提案している政策は、地方を活性化することにもつながると思います。例えば、まさに手取りが増えることになりますから、所得が増えれば消費が増えます。そして何よりも、今、103万円の壁ということで、最低賃金やあるいは時給が上がったのにもかかわらず、働く時間を調整して、特にこれから年末、11月、12月、お客さんがたくさん来るのに、人が雇えないということで、わざわざお店を閉めているというようなところもあります。そういったことがですね、つまり需要に対して、労働供給の制約が外れることになるので、より企業業績が上がって、売上も伸びて、その結果、法人税や消費税やさまざまな税収も増えることが考えられるので、その一面的に単に減るということだけではなくて、経済の活性化、とりわけ労働供給が増えることに伴う経済の活性化と税収の増加も合わせて考えていく必要があると思います。
I understand or I recognize that these kind of concerns are being raised from within the LDP. However, our planned proposal to increase this amount is actually going to lead, we believe, to more activation of these regional areas, revitalization of them. So, for example, if we're looking at the situation where people are able to have more cash in hand, more pay coming in hand, therefore more income, this also will lead to more consumption as well. With the issue of the wall of 1.03 million in place at the moment, this means that even if there is an increase in people's minimum wage or hourly wage, they are adjusting the hours that they are working so that they will not overcome or exceed this amount as well, particularly looking at the busy end of year period in this November or next month in December as well. It is a period where there are many customers going out in shops and restaurants and so on. However, due to the fact of not having enough people to staff them because of this issue, there are many stores or restaurants who are not even able to open their doors during this period. So looking at how how to have a situation where the demand from the customer side can be met by the labor supply as well, will then lead to an increase in sales, increase therefore in also income tax, corporate tax, and these sorts of things as well. So while on one aspect there is this concern in regards to less tax money, at the same time we need to look at this from an overall economic policy and see how it will actually lead to more overall economic revitalization, including of the regional areas, through to this increase in the labor supply and income increase in tax, which will then come accordingly.
ラジオフランスの特派員で西村と申します。よろしくお願いします。ここ20年間で日本の企業の技術力や、その世界での存在感が低下しつつあると思いますが、玉木さんはこの状況をどう分析するのか、対策とかは何か提案がありますでしょうか。
My name is Nishimura of Radio France. In the past 20 years, we have seen perhaps a decline in the global presence of Japanese companies or their expertise and so on as well. How do you analyze this situation and what are your policies in regards to this?
非常に重要な質問をいただきました。一つの理由はですね、科学技術に対する投資が、国も民間も減っていることが大きな原因だと思います。例えば、いくつか例を挙げますと、大学に対する、大学の科学技術分野に対する国の予算、中国は20年間で24倍にしてます。韓国は 5.8 倍、アメリカは 2.7 倍なのに対して日本はなんと 0.9 倍で1割も減らしています。ドクターホルダー、博士号の取得者の数が主要国の中で唯一減っているのが日本です。で、科学技術立国と長く言われてきましたけれども、そういった分野にお金を使わなくなって、結果技術力が極めて低下しているということなので、我々はこの教育や科学技術の分野への予算を倍増させようと。そのために使い道を教育科学技術に限定した教育国債という新しい国債を発行して、この関連予算を倍にしようと。で、リターンがあるので、これは将来の成長や税収の増加にもつながる分野ですから、国債発行しても十分償還できると考えています。
This is a very important question. I think that one of the reasons for this is that there has been a significant decrease in investment in the science and technology fields from both the private and the public sectors, which is playing a very significant factor in regards to this. If we look at, for example, investment in scientific experts and so on within universities, the figures from China in the past 20 years, there has been an increase by 24 times, in the Republic of Korea by 5.8 times, in the United States 2.7 times. However, in Japan, this has actually had a decrease of 0.9 within this period as well. Looking at the number of doctorate holders as well, Japan is the only one of the major economies where there has actually been a decrease in this number in recent years as well. Therefore, by not investing, not using funds on these kind of science and technology development, research and so on, has led to very much a decrease in that skill, the expertise there as well. Therefore, we are proposing to have, in regards to education and science, to double the amount of expenditure which will be used on this by actually issuing national bonds specifically for education. And this will then, of course, in the longer term, lead to returns through income tax and so on as well. Therefore, we'll be able to have a recovery of this. This is what we're proposing going forward.
Leo?
Thank you very much. Leo Lewis from the Financial Times. Do you think that in a situation where there is no national security concern, that foreign companies should be free to buy Japanese companies?
ファイナンシャル・タイムズです。もし国家の安全保障などの懸念がなければ、海外の企業が日本の企業を買収するというようなことは規制すべきなのか、禁止すべきなのか。
安全保障の懸念がなければ、経済は基本的に自由であるべきだと思います。ただ、今、いろんな意味でのその安全保障上の懸念が出てきているので、そういったその外資による企業の取得などについては各国とも規制を強化してきているので、自由貿易を過度に阻害しない範囲で、安全保障上の懸念がある場合については、一定の規制を入れるべきと考えます。ただ、原則は、ビジネスは自由ということだと思います。
As a principle, I believe that if there are no security concerns, the economy, this kind of trading should be free. However, we do, of course, have the situation where there are various security concerns in place. Therefore, if we're looking at the acquisition of Japanese companies by foreign companies, we need to be keeping this kind of thing in perspective, how this is in there as well. If we're looking at how this should be in the current situation with the security concerns which exist, restrictions on the acquisition of Japanese companies to the extent that it will not have a negative impact on free trade and so on. However, to emphasize, in principle, if there were no security concerns, this should be open and free.
1点ちょっと付け加えますが、国民民主党は外国人の土地取得規制法というものを提出をしています。でこれは土地の取得も基本的には自由なんですが、今おっしゃったような安全保障上の問題等が生じた場合についてはですね、一定の土地取得については規制を入れると。で例えば日本はですね、中国の土地を買うことはできません。ただ中国の方は日本の土地を買うことができるということですので、いわゆるレスプロシティという相互主義に基づいた一定の規制を導入すべきではないかという提案を申し上げています。
And to add one point in relation to this, the DPP has put forward a bill for placing restrictions on the purchase of Japanese land by overseas individuals. At the moment, and this is of course in regards to also looking at potential security concerns which could be in place, as was referred to there as well. So if we give an example, at the moment it is not possible for someone from Japan to purchase land in China. However, the reverse is possible. Chinese people can purchase land in Japan. Therefore, we believe that certain kinds of restrictions, limits should be put in place through this law which we are putting forward based on the principles of reciprocity.
Sir, I'll try to, one final question. This is from Motoko Rich of the New York Times. She asked, with the proposal about the minimum tax threshold increase, will that affect new defense commitments of Japan?
最後の質問、ニューヨーク・タイムズの元子リッチさんからの質問なんですけれども、その基礎控除の引き上げという提案の中で、それは日本の防衛費のコミットメントにはどのような影響がありますでしょうか。影響があるとしたら。
直接影響はないと思います。経済が元気になればですね、その防衛力を強化していくことにもプラスに働くと思いますので、まずは経済を元気にしていく、現役世代を元気にしていく、このことにまず優先的に取り組んでいきたい。そのことはひいては日本の国力、あるいは防衛力の強化にもつながると思います。
I do not believe that there will be any direct on this as well. Having this change in the minimum tax deduction will lead to a more energy in the economy, which will then in the longer term be also a plus for increasing Japan's defense capabilities as well through energizing the economy and the working generation as well. Therefore, it will lead, rather than any negative impact, actually to an increase in Japan's strength and capacities in the overall view.
All right, as noted, our guest needs to leave now. As is our custom here at the club, we'd like to offer you a one-year honorary membership to our organization. Perhaps we can have a Kagawa night or invite you to our New Year's party in January. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you. ありがとうございました。